Persona is a film that came out in 1966 that's written and directed by Ingmar Bergman. So I'm extremely excited to finally talk about this film with you guys because it's a film that I've been meaning to see for at least a few years now. Thankfully, my buddy Perry, who's a $50 patron, finally requested this film to me, and I was absolutely ecstatic, obviously. The only Ingmar Bergman film that I've seen before this was Wild Strawberries, and I enjoyed that film quite a bit, but that's the only Ingmar Bergman film that I've seen. And now after watching Persona, I can tell that it's an entirely different monster than Wild Strawberries. Wild Strawberries is a lot more tame and has a lot more of a subdued approach to it. Persona is definitely a lot more daring and a lot more bold as a film. And to be honest, it completely encapsulates the exact reasons as to why I admire and appreciate filmmaking more as an art form rather than an entertainment medium. I mean, I can be entertained by films and that's fine, and I'll enjoy it for what it is. But there's something about films like this that really take those artistic risks and really push the boundaries of what cinema can be, that just really makes me fall in love with film and filmmaking and just inspires the hell out of me. This is a film that is incredibly ambiguous in a lot of different ways. In some ways, it's actually not. Like, in some ways, it's actually pretty clear in terms of what it's going for. But then in other ways, it's incredibly interpretive. And this is a film that, I'm not going to lie, I saw twice. So I saw this film twice from start to finish, and I still am a little bit perplexed by the ending of this film. I mean, I feel like I have a light understanding of it, but it's intentionally crafted in a way to where to say that you just have like this objective grounded answer on what this film is going for is an extremely bold claim. And I would just love to hear everybody's interpretations of what they think this film means, what they think, what's conveyed in the narrative, especially in the ending of this film, because it is an ambiguous piece of filmmaking that's just artistically rich, and it's a film that explores so many different things, most of it revolving around the human condition, and which I hear is what most Bergman films tackle. A lot of them revolve around the human condition, so I've heard, but this film does tackle the human condition, whether it's about sexuality, whether it's about gender, whether it's about psychology, whether it's about identity, whether it's about the search for meaning and passion in your life, whether it's about what it is to be human, whether it's about even if there's an answer to any of these questions. I mean, this film tackles a broad range of philosophical concepts and subjects, but honestly, the two things that really stood out to me was the duality of the human species and also just the power of filmmaking. In a weird way, this film is, in my opinion, a love letter to cinema. And to me, that is demonstrated in certain pieces of imagery and also just in the structure and approach of this film. Because this film makes it abundantly clear at the very beginning that you are witnessing a film. And it also reminds you a few times in the middle of this film through these really abrupt spliced images that are within the film that seem random but actually have a certain purpose. At least some of the images I interpreted to have a meaning and purpose to them. And then also absolutely in the ending of this film, it ends on a note that is certainly trying to remind you that you are indeed watching a film, and also just, again, I feel like it's trying to express the power of filmmaking as a medium. And, you know, in terms of imagery, the image that I have here behind me of the boy kind of like caressing the screen, that to me is a really powerful symbolic image. And I personally interpreted the little boy in this film as a symbol for the audience and just film lovers, in the sense that we are just really obsessed and immersed and infatuated with moving images. And again, it expresses the kind of love and the power that filmmaking has, because even though we know we're watching a film, especially with this film, we're very aware that we're watching a film because the film makes it clear, as I stated, but yet we just can't help but just get completely immersed in the experience. And to me, like, I think in terms of that image, that's what somewhat it was symbolically representing. And this film as a whole is filled with symbolic imagery like that. But to be honest, I'm still thinking deeply on where this exactly fits in the film's narrative. I think I kinda get it somewhat, but again, I'm still like a bit perplexed by it. I again would love to hear everybody's interpretations of where this fits in and really anything else about this film because, as I've stated, incredibly interpretive film. But yes, also as I mentioned, I feel like the other big thing that stood out to me in this film was the duality of the human species. Without really giving too much away, I feel like this film demonstrated incredibly well, not only through its brilliant dialogue, but also through the imagery and the editing, and obviously the direction, how one truth of somebody is never just completely linear and fully objective. Because to me, I feel like it expresses the notion that one truth about someone is always met with an opposing truth. If you're a really outgoing person, there's also something about you that's incredibly reserved and hidden from everybody. If you're a very fearful person, there's also an aspect of you that is incredibly brave and courageous. And, the list can go on and on forever, but I just feel like this film demonstrates beautifully the kind of complexity of the human psyche and just the complexity of human personality. Because this, to me, is a film about a human being that is going through one hell of an identity crisis. At least that's what I personally got out of it. But this is a film that's definitely trying to express how the lack of conviction and the lack of confidence, whether it's due to a lot of, past traumatic events or a lot of actions that you've done in the past that you aren't particularly proud of. And all these things can lead to, again, a person who just doesn't feel that rooted, doesn't feel that grounded and confident in what they're currently doing and who they are as a person. And again, this is a film to me where a main character just truly lacks this grounded conviction, whether it's their beliefs or whether it's their passion or someone who just isn't owning their life in the way that they like to. But you do have two main characters in this film, one played by Bibi Andersson and the other one played by Liv Ullmann. Both incredible actresses. I mean, they give powerhouse performances in this film. Ullmann plays the more subtle performance, but it's at least as powerful as Bibi Andersson's performance, who is, again, it's a bit more showy, it's a lot more talkative, obviously, but it's obviously, their dynamic exists for that kind of opposing reason, as I was mentioning earlier, and I just think it's a brilliant concept in terms of these characters' dynamic, because it goes back to that kind of those philosophical ideas that I mentioned that has to do with the opposing truths of the human species. And again, I just think it's a really smart concept. It's explored the best way that I could ever imagine. And it's also in general just a brilliantly written film. There's only maybe one or two moments where I think the dialogue is just a tad bit too much on the nose. But besides that, I feel like the dialogue flows incredibly naturally, and a lot of it feels more genuine. It doesn't feel like it's just trying to be wordy and philosophical to try to sound smart. A lot of it came off incredibly telling to the character, because there are scenes in this film, one scene in particular, where a character comes out about one of her past events when she was younger, this event that happened on a beach, and that is a really intense scene, and it's beautifully delivered, beautifully acted, and I think is one of the better scenes in the film, even though this film was compiled of just amazing scenes. But that to me was one of the more intense scenes in the film that, again, is really telling about the character and kind of just opens a can of worms and kind of tries to give audiences the clues as to what this film is actually going for. And I haven't even touched the aesthetic work in this film yet, but the aesthetics are absolutely stunning. Not only is it just framed beautifully and is filled with these gorgeous shots, but they all kind of have a symbolic meaning to them. A lot of them have, not only, again, are they just pleasing to look at, but they're obviously framed and blocked in a way that are conveying some sort of thematic or symbolic meaning. And that's something that I highly admired in this film. Like, take this one shot, for example. This is one of my favorite shots of the entire film. Not only is this just gorgeously framed, but this definitely has a symbolic meaning in regards to the scene's context. And it was scenes like this that, again, reminded me how truly much I admire the art of filmmaking. But yeah, this is a stunning and beautiful piece of filmmaking that, I haven't really said this yet, but can actually be quite unsettling. I didn't expect this film to be that unsettling throughout, but there are a couple of moments that truly made me feel uncomfortable. And I love that shit. But obviously, I really love this film quite a bit. The writing, the directing, the aesthetic work, just in terms of its artistic integrity is just on a whole other level. So I'm going to give Ingmar Bergman's Persona a strong 9 out of 10. Really, the only reason why I'm not giving it a perfect grade is because, as I mentioned, there was just a few moments where I feel like the dialogue was just a little bit too on the nose. But really, that's the only tiny thing that slightly bothered me in this film. Everything else, I think, is absolutely masterful. And, especially for the time it came out in 1966, I think this is an achievement in art house experimental filmmaking. And I am absolutely stoked to watch more Bergman stuff. I still haven't seen The Seventh Seal or Shame or Cries and Whispers. Haven't seen really any Bergman besides Wild Strawberries and Persona, but I'm really excited to dive more into his work. I'm definitely going to be picking up Persona during the next Criterion sale. I have to own this film. But either way, that's all I got to say about Persona. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about it, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.